Welcome to Hive Mind Headlines, the podcast of Branford Public Schools, where we take a closer look at the people, programs, and decisions shaping our school community. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Tranberg, proud superintendent of the Branford Public Schools. Today, we are talking about the future of our school facilities and the work already underway to bring that future to life. Our Master Facilities Plan represents a significant investment in the learning environments our students and staff use every day. Over the summer, important improvements were completed across the district. Now we are preparing for the next major phase, renovations and additions at Mary T. Murphy and Mary R. Tisco elementary schools. This is an exciting time for Branford. These projects will create more modern, secure, and effective learning spaces for generations of students. At the same time, we know that work of this scale will bring disruption. Construction changes in routines and the planned closure of our elementary schools will require careful coordination, thoughtful communication, and support for students, families, and staff. So, how did we arrive at this plan? What work has already been completed? What can our community expect in the months and years ahead? To help answer these questions, we will hear from several members of our community, including members of the Branford Board of Education and our First Selectman, who will discuss the vision, decision-making, and financing behind the plan. Next, our facilities and security directors will explain how projects are being coordinated and what has already been accomplished. Finally, two of our elementary school principals will share what these changes will mean for students, staff, and families at the school level. Let's dive in. I'm pleased to welcome Peter Berdon, Chair of the Branford Board of Education, Donna Laich, our Vice Chair, and Josh Brooks, First Selectman for the town of Branford. Welcome, everyone.
Good
Thank
morning.
you.
For listeners who may be hearing about the Master Facilities Plan for the first time, what is the story behind it and what is the plan intended to accomplish in your eyes?
I guess I can go ahead and start with that one, Chris. So the Master Facilities Plan was initiated about 2.5 years or so ago by the Branford Board of Education. The reason we undertook that project was to be able to identify the needs of the facilities for the district on a long-term basis. We initially went into that Master Facilities Plan taking a very hard look at Tisco, but as we got deep into that project, we realized that as you peeled back some of the layers, additional projects and facilities were needed. But at a high level, the master facilities plans just to give us an outline as to what our facility needs are going to be for the next 10 to 20 years. So it's a generational type study.
I'll just adding to that too. When I arrived, there was a study that was completed on Sliney, and 10 years before that, there was a study completed on Sliney, which pretty much was saying you need to do something about Sliney. And the thought was going to be, well, let's just build a new elementary school there. But when the when I went to the town to talk about that, there were some bigger questions about, well, what do all of the schools need? What does the future look like? What is the preventive maintenance plan? So in addition to addressing the challenge we thought we had, this is about like, well, what are the challenges over the next 15 years? So that's part of how we ended up where we did. And with that said, we're at an exciting crossroads right now because projects are hopefully like we're on the precipice of things happening. So for Selectman Brooks, these projects represent a significant investment by the community. How does the town and board balance educational needs, fiscal responsibility, and the long-term value of projects like these?
I mean, I think Branford historically has done a phenomenal job in both in being fiscally responsible, but also addressing the needs of the town folks as a whole. But and it's not really separate, but Board of Education and the facilities that you all inhabit. I think we've always done a great job in balancing that. And this particular project, I when we authorize the bonds, will be the biggest bond authorization that the town has ever partaken in, and so a lot of work has been happening behind the scenes to address how that looks for us, not just next year, but 10 to 20 years from now, and how that affects us both from our ability to do other projects and balance the needs of the taxpayers, so it's not overburdening that burdening them. Now, in this project, we were fortunate working with our state delegation to get a higher reimbursement rate. So our reimbursement rate is going to go up to 72%. That's our target. And so while the project may cost, estimates of around $200 million, uh, really it's only going to cost the taxpayers more like somewhere in the neighborhood of $60 million. And we have done a lot of modeling for the next 20 years of what that looks like. Does that and how that affects our mill rate, our bond rating, all of those factors, because those are all very important. You can't just go ahead and say, well, we're going to build the schools because we need it. And without question, we need it. I mean, that is very obvious. I was part of the master facility study before I was first selectman, and I remember being the youth outreach worker 30 years ago, and conversations happening about, well, what are we going to do about Sliney? So we all know this didn't creep up on us. We've known this is where we need to go, and I think the comprehensive nature of what we're looking at, it's not just addressing a need today, but it's addressing a need in the future that we know is coming. And that involves pre-K and some of the other things. So we have a unique opportunity because of our reimbursement rate to get these things done while at the same time not overburdening the taxpayers and trying to keep our debt service under a two-digit number. And we, without question, have that opportunity, but not hamstringing ourselves with so we can't do other, necessary projects that may or may not come up.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to add to that piece?
I actually was just thinking about how exciting this is for Branford residents when we are demonstrating how important our students are to us and the children of Branford. And we have to keep in mind, school is their home for 10 months out of the year, almost 10 months. It's their home. They spend 6 hours a day there, most of their waking time in these buildings. So, us demonstrating to them how important they are to us and that we want them to be in up to date, safe, comfortable, modern environments is just really exciting. And I think everyone in Branford should be excited about that. And we're also, I know this is not about the school buses, but we are leading in so many ways. And the electrification of our school buses is just so amazing. And so, yeah, I'm very excited for the students of Branford.
As a former educator, have you had an experience working in some newer facilities and maybe some not new facilities? And if you recall, did that make a difference to you as a staff member?
Absolutely. I was a teacher and also worked later in my career as a school psychologist. And so I worked at every level: elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. In my experience, obviously, a newer, modernized facility that is safe and clean is so much easier to work in. And I would say good teachers, that's the most important piece of a student's education. A good teacher is invaluable, but a good teacher can be so much better when their environment is, when they have the right tools and comfort level and space. It adds so much. I'll also say I worked in a district where there were two high schools, which limited us to how much we could actually offer course wise. Like combining all of the tools that you have in your education system is really helpful. So I think condensing to two schools is going to give us so much more flexibility in what we have to offer.
Great, thank you for that perspective. Uh, for Peter and Josh, you were both on the committee leading up to the master facilities plan. Can you talk a little bit about what did that look like from looking at enrollment projections, the building conditions, educational priorities? And I'm asking this question because people tune into the conversation at very different times along the way. And we have 2.5 years of work that have already happened. And some people might not tune in until 2.5 years from now when they realize that Sliney is actually closing. So what is kind of the arc of how that all works? And then it's just also a plug for bpsforward.com for people to catch up if they want to see the work that's happened so far.
Um, what I was most impressed about was the willingness by that committee and everybody involved to not just get pigeonholed. They didn't get pigeonholed into one solution. We looked at multiple solutions. We looked at, is it possible to create one school? Is it possible to build a third elementary school in another location? We looked at so many different possibilities, different parcels of land in town, different models for what that would look like financially. It was a thorough process that everybody chipped in on, but it was also a very bipartisan process where it didn't nobody looked at it from the lens of one side or the other. We all looked at it from the side of, how do we make this work best for the kids of Branford and the taxpayers of Branford and the future of Branford. And it was quite a collaborative and impressive effort.
When you think about it, I think we started off with maybe 26 or something like that, conceivable possibilities, and had to kind of ferret through those. They got narrowed down fairly quickly to about 12 or so. And then finally, we had to narrow those down even further so there could be some reasonable selections. There was an awful lot of community input as well as faculty and staff input into those selections. But as Josh said, when we approached the problem, it was really looking at what are the possible solutions, all the variables of a possible solution, and then kind of focusing in as to what were realistic solutions. And it was a really collaborative effort among a very large group of people that sought community input all along the way.
I would say I said on the precipice early, and that's because the timing, we have this looming October deadline where we are working toward an appropriation, ultimately from the Board of Finance and RTM. What are some kind of critical things that need to happen from your perspective before that before that happens?
Well, we have created a sort of quasi timeline for events to take place, and some of them have. They had an informational meeting for the Board of Finance on August 12th. There is an informational meeting for the RTM to just fully grasp the concept and what's happening. And then we will have a Board of Finance meeting towards the end of August to take a vote, hopefully, on the appropriation. Then it will go to the RTM early September. Hopefully, the RTM passes that either on the 2nd of September or the 9th of September, allowing for the 15-day referendum, and then we can go to the next process of go to the state with our proposal. All along the way, there's been lots of communication. Some of the most I've seen, at least from my perspective, between the Board of Ed, the Board of Finance, the RTM, all collaborating and having conversations on how to get to that point. And so I encourage the public, all of those meetings that I mentioned are public meetings, and I encourage the public to participate because good government is where we're all involved.
If I could just add on to that, Josh spoke about the financing, which is a really important component to this project. But the Board of Education, as part of that financing request, needs to advance educational specifications, and those are the listing of things that the school buildings need to have. And that has to be part of our grant application process. So the Board of Education is going to be adopting those later on this month in August. So if people want to have input into that, if they think there's something that the schools are lacking that they need, now's the time to put that input in because we need to have that contained in with our educational specs.
Yeah, I agree with everything Josh and Peter stated about the collaboration and the RTM and the Board of Ed and the public and the administration. I think it's admirable, and I think it's important for the public to know how much work has already gone into this and how many people had their fingers in it. So teachers were interviewed and administrators, and so many people have input into what we've done so far, and there's still more to do.
And I'll just add, I really appreciate the collaboration between the Board of Education and the town, because not every town benefits from the great relationship that we have, and I do appreciate that. And even you being here today, Josh, certainly speaks to how well everyone is working together. And so this is the last question, and the question that I asked all of the all of the people that will be in this episode of the podcast is: if we fast forward 10 years from now, what do you hope you'll be able to say about how this transition went, and like what's the legacy and benefit to the students and community over time?
I mean, if I'm being honest, I hope I'm the first selectman and you invite me back to have this conversation. But short of that, my hope is that we'll be talking about this transition in the past, in the distant past. That in 10 years, it's been 5, 6 years that the kids are now in those schools, and that it's just normal for us now. And I know that that's going to happen. I know that in 10 years, this will just feel like, well, that happened. The same with Walsh. And now you don't even remember the challenges that were presented with the old Walsh building. And hopefully in 10 years, we can be talking about something else, like, getting all of the schools to net zero. A different conversation, because it just seems like it just made sense, and it will make sense. And that's where my hope is.
For me, I remember back when I went to actually Sliney, and I can remember my third grade teacher there, Miss Silvestri, and listening to Elton John in her classroom, and it's just a wonderful memory. And I hope 10 years from now that the students that are at our schools will be able to develop memories that they will be able to remember. I hate to say, 45 years, 50 years later. Uh, that's my hope.
I foresee Branford as being a leading district in the state and maybe the country. I mean, we've done so much already. I already mentioned the electrification of the buses, and these two schools are going to be state of the art. And Branford is just really moving forward. I think in 10 years, we will see the results of everything that we've worked hard to accomplish.
Great. Thank you, Peter, Donna, and Josh, for helping us understand the vision and decision making behind the master facilities plan. On behalf of the students and staff at BPS, we are excited and appreciate all of your support. A plan of this scale becomes real through hundreds of interconnected details, from construction schedules to building access and security. For that perspective, we turn now to two members of our district leadership team: Brendan Leddy, Director of Facilities, and Scott Riordan, Director of Security. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
So let's start with some of the work that was completed over the summer. The people in the community may have realized large scale construction happening, especially at the high school. So, what are some of the most significant improvements, and what might students, staff, and families notice as we start the new school year?
Well, the high school certainly took a bulk of the work this summer, focused on the major roof renovation. In addition to the roof, there are a lot of other smaller projects that are going on inside the school. Some were planned as part of a large capital appropriation, and some are just ongoing maintenance, such as painting, and small touch-ups and things that people will really notice. But some of the big projects include upgraded HVAC in the F wing, which had failed previously. We're currently working on that. As I mentioned, there's a lot of painting that's going on throughout the building, so a fresh look, especially as you first walk in the door. The entire front entrance lobby has been painted. We've added a welcome and information security desk. There was a kind of a podium there previously, but now people have a place to go to ask questions, to find out, and to be really greeted when they come into the school. We've added a security office adjacent to that front entrance. The idea is to have someone stationed at the new desk, and also the ability to communicate with security right there. A lot of plumbing and electrical, a lot of behind the scenes things are happening as well. We're adding shutoffs to some of the plumbing. A lot of the building is old. It was put together in three phases: 1958, 78, 96. A lot of that plumbing has kind of overlapped each other, and so when there is an issue, we need to shut the entire building down, which isn't ideal. So we've added some different shutoffs that allow us to tackle some projects and not affect the entire building. A lot of the electrical upgrades are focused on some specific classrooms. The culinary area got some electrical upgrades for some new equipment that they've ordered. A lot of other electrical projects were involved with the technology department. We've added a lot of new screens throughout the building some large monitors. We replaced some monitors. A big thing that people are really going to notice is the flooring. Every classroom got new flooring this year. If it was a tile floor, it was replaced with a new LVT floor. And if there was carpet, it's replaced with new carpet. In a lot of those classrooms, in addition to the carpet, they've been painted. We've been very strategic about the painting, trying to paint wings of classrooms or wings of hallways. So a majority of the F-wing classes will come into new flooring, new paint, new ceiling tile, and new HVAC, which is a major upgrade for them, and especially in that area. It's hard for everyone to realize or look at the roof being replaced, but we're really hopeful that people feel the impact inside the building. Gone will be a lot of the red buckets, a lot of the tunnels and tarps feeding into buckets. So we're hoping for a very much improved learning atmosphere and environment inside the building. So a lot of these projects that we've done are very visual. They're very impactful. I think that people, especially at the high school, will enjoy seeing a lot of the work that's been done. They'll notice the work that has been done. There's still more to come, but we feel very good about it. Outside of the high school, there's some smaller, just regular preventative maintenance things that we've done. We're waiting on a new swing set at Tisco, which is expected at the end of September. We're awaiting a new playground at Indian Neck School, which is expected to arrive at the end of October. And then we've just done some minor maintenance. Every parking lot has gotten restriped. We've done some regular preventative maintenance throughout all of the schools, and our custodians have really done a great job. They're all ahead of schedule right now. They really do a very good job. They're very prideful and dedicated to the work that they do. And every elementary school, if we had to move into school tomorrow, we could. They really have gone above and beyond. The final piece at the elementary schools is happening now. This week, new third grade furniture was delivered, is currently being assembled. All those classrooms got a fresh coat of paint and are ready to go as well.
That's great. Scott, from the security perspective, any uh, upgrades that are happening, and specifically with the high school, with the move of the security office, what do you think the advantages are to that?
Oh, yes. So this summer has been a very busy period for both security facilities and IT, and we work in conjunction to accomplish all these things. The first visual cue that our students, staff, and family will see is we've added ballistic filming, window tinting to all our windows at the high school, all our main entrances and doors, exterior doors at all the schools, to include some office windows and whatnot. A lot of our buildings are a little older. This window tinting and solar film gives us a little bit of added security as far as breakage of windows and whatnot. At the high school, as Brendan mentioned, we had added a welcome desk. Our schools really didn't have a location for security. At the end of last year, we added podiums at every school. So the first thing when people walk into our schools, they should be greeted with a security officer, at least a podium, and that's pretty much at every school. We've added exterior notifications. I realized that none of our schools had any exterior fire alarms or LED lights. When we do drills and whatnot, nothing alerted the public, whether it be a drill or an actual fire alarm activation, which happened last year. So the exterior lights and alarms and additional speakers will allow our staff that's sometimes outside of the building understand that there may be an issue inside the building.
Brendan, you mentioned some of the projects are not going to be completed until maybe the end of September, end of October. With some materials arriving late and potentially the roof construction project continuing, how are we mitigating any concerns about challenges with safety? And what are some management things we're doing to make sure the campus remains safe while it's open during construction?
Yeah, so specifically at the high school, I think we've had some concerns. A lot of unprecedented rain this summer. Heavy downpours have affected certainly the roof. We had the Canadian wildfire smoke. We've had some unusually warm and humid days, which make the roof work very difficult. So we're a little bit delayed in that progress, but we do have a plan. There will be a portion of the roof that is incomplete. Spoke with building administration yesterday. We have an area that will be fenced off. We have flaggers that will be in the parking lots rerouting traffic. There will be safety cones and signage similar to a road detour or road work that you would see. We're going to reroute some of the traffic for a certain portion of the day just so we can get in and complete a lot of this work. The skylight portion of the common area, we did the skylights last year, and there's a wall system, a cow wall system that surrounds those skylights. and we're a little bit delayed on the material arrival, but that work will be completed in September, during the month of September, in the common area. So the commons area will be closed in the afternoons so that they can complete that work. It'll be closed from 3 o'clock on.
For people that are tuning in for the first time or early on in the Master Facilities Planning Project, we are closing John B. Sliney School. So there might be a question of, well, where are those students going to go that attend there right now? Can you just talk big picture of where's the space going to be for students that currently attend Sliney or
Yeah,
will
sure.
attend Sliney?
Sure. We're undergoing a feasibility study now, and there are plans to renovate both Murphy and Tisco to be able to take those students from Sliney and divide them into both of those schools.
Great, thanks. As we continue to make improvements with safety and security of our buildings, what are some things that families might notice as far as building access, visitor management, and emergency communications in the upcoming year?
Okay, we've built out a significant emergency communications protocol, which we hopefully be rolling out this year. In addition to the physical improvements, we've done a lot on the back end, such as standard operating procedures for security. I'm in the process of building out a district-wide emergency operations plan. In addition to a reunification plan, we've invested a lot of effort and time and capital into a new look for security, new uniforms. I just purchased high visibility jackets. The focus on security this year will be much more visibility. It's my goal to anyone who comes onto our campus, the first person they see will be a smiling security guard and to help them.
How are facilities, technology, and security working with our administration and first responders to coordinate the work? Because these three teams work together quite a bit, and people might not realize how much those efforts have to be coordinated, and not only with each other within the school and administration, but also working with police and fire and the town. Can you talk a little bit about what that collaboration looks like?
Sure. As far as security goes, there's literally nothing I do that doesn't touch upon facilities and IT. And quite frankly, I'm super lucky to have Brendan and Tom Pisani, our IT director, and be remiss not to mention Blaise Leviton, the chief operating officer. We have a very tight knit group. Interact with Brendan and Tom multiple times a day. We've identified several deficiencies that we have pretty much knocked off our list this summer.
Yeah, we met early on when we had this capital appropriation, especially for the high school. Part of the appropriation was for life safety. We also had a reappropriation that went into safety and security equipment, and life safety throughout the district. So we coordinated early on at the end of last school year to make sure that throughout the summer, what were these major projects that we wanted to really hone in on for this summer. And we've coordinated different access control, especially at the high school in the main office area, over in athletics. As Scott said, we were trying to identify these deficiencies, and we work hand in hand together throughout this summer. Scott has toured the building at the high school with me several times. We worked on the design and the layout of the security office. The three of us are very connected and very involved in a lot of the projects, because if it involves a new piece of technology, facilities needs to be able to support in terms of providing an electrician or the hardware or the contractor to help install. And the same thing with security. There are pieces that we all just intermingle on so frequently.
And in coordination with the town, I think it's worth mentioning the relationship we have with the police and fire department, who are actively using the schools too for their training.
Yeah, the first time I think the Branford Police Department has been training in our schools in over a decade. We've had a really good relationship with the chief of police and the fire chief, probably in communication with somebody from their departments weekly, if not daily. My vision is to have the Branford Police Department in our schools more often than not. The first time they enter our schools should not be during an emergency situation. So right now there's a program where all their new hires will come to our schools and do walkthroughs, led by security, and just getting them comfortable. Their presence on our campus is welcomed. It's been a great partnership. I feel very supported. We are truly looking forward to a continued partnership and hopefully acquiring an SRO in our school system, which will do nothing but improve our safety posture.
Great. And last question, I'm asking each group this for this episode of the podcast. If you fast forward 10 years into the future and these projects are complete as at least conceptually planned at the moment, what do you hope the benefit will be to the students and the community of Branford as a result of your efforts now?
My hope is that we just continue to provide a great learning environment where people feel safe. They're excited to come to school, to come to work. And I think one thing about Branford that I've seen is, people are very prideful. So I want them to continue to feel that sense of pride when they come into the schools, when they drive by the schools, when they use the school, not only for a learning environment, but maybe through a community project, a community event, a youth sports league. So that's my vision, is to just make sure that we can sustain and keep building this standard and maintain that level of standard throughout the next decade.
My mandate was clear. We were going to build the best security department in the state of Connecticut and be the gold standard for the rest of the state to look up to. The goal is to provide a safe environment for families, students, staff, visitors. Let us worry about the security. You worry about focusing on learning and building relationships and succeeding.
Great. Thank you both for your time, and thank you for all your work in making these projects come to life.
Thank you.
We've heard about the vision behind the master facilities plan and the operational work required to carry it forward, but these changes will ultimately be experienced inside our schools by students, educators, staff, and families. To discuss that experience, we are joined by two of our elementary school principals, Jim O'Connor from Tisco and Dr. Maria Clark from Sliney. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you. So to get started, tell us, how long have you been members of the Branford Public Schools community?
I've been a part of Branford's, I'm going into actually my 8th year. It goes by so
That's
fast.
amazing.
I know.
Yeah, I'm going into my 16th year, and it's been unbelievable.
Well, thank you both for your dedication to Branford and for doing this with us today. And hopefully this is an exciting conversation because some big changes are ahead for Branford and big positive changes. So from your perspective, what is the most exciting about the improvements planned for Branford's elementary schools?
Well, I think the state-of-the-art facilities will allow our children to have high expectations, our families to be really active in the day-to-day events, and really hit all of our things that we want our children to do on a daily basis, and really be a complete community and be up to date and really give our people what we need.
Yeah, and in addition to the art of the facilities that we'll be going into, it's just creating that sense of a community in Branford and bringing the two schools together. I think that's really, really exciting.
Yeah, I like the fact that we're going from 3 schools down to 2 schools, so it'll be more unison, and really the kids will really be, because of the sizes, they'll be a little bit bigger, but our staff and our communities will be together a lot
Mhm.
more.
Yeah, and I want the staff and community to feel like it's not just we're absorbing Sliney into the two schools. It's more of we are creating a new community that's going to bring forward the vision of the district and also improve the outcomes of our students, but also the outcomes of teachers and staff and the
Yeah.
whole community.
Great, that's a great point. With all of the excitement certainly comes there's a time of sadness and even mourning because we're closing Sliney as part of
Mhm.
this. And for those that are tuning in for the first time, Sliney is not closing tomorrow. These projects take years, but ultimately, uh, we are going to be looking at 2 elementary schools instead of 3. So, with that said, uh, what are things that you're hearing, things that we should be thinking about in relation to the closure of a school and planning for that?
Mhm. Yeah, I think, right now, it's been difficult for some in terms of this change. However, the communication that has been provided over the past couple years about the changes has been so consistent that I believe that our staff and community really know it is going to happen. But with that said, I think that we also have to recognize that change is difficult. And how are we going to do to make sure that we're consistent with communications? How are we going to make sure that we are going to continue to, help teachers, staff, students, and parents know that even with this change, your child is going to be taken care of, teachers are going to be taken care of. And what is the future? I think going into this, we just have to really continue to communicate what is this going to be, or how is this going to help and support our community at large? But in terms of, how are we making sure our staff is feeling a part of this, I think our district has really done an excellent job with that.
What happens often with projects like this is the people that are currently in a school are not necessarily affected because they take so many years. So for people that are tuning in now, bpsforward.com is our website that has I'll say an archive of all of the work that was done, the community gathering information, just so you can see all of the thought and thinking that went into it so far. And I agree that there's a lot to get done still because when it actually happens and becomes a reality, we are dealing with the emotions that come with with closing a school that has a legacy, a school that is at the center of the town, is a beautiful building, and has a certainly a long history in the community.
And I think discussing that history and being open about that history and talking about the positives that it's brought to our community is the most important thing. And saying that from the receiving end of those students, that we're not just leaving that we're encompassing that into our future, and that Sliney will always be part of our, you know, present and future is an important piece for our families.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, carrying on the traditions,
Yeah.
some artifacts from the building, and really making sure that we carry that into the two new facilities is important. And knowing that, there has been history, at Sliney that will carry on it throughout the two buildings. Not sure how yet, but I know our staff will rally and make sure that continues to happen.
Yeah, and we did that in the planning. That's why when we looked at the ed specs, they didn't
Mhm.
just go and look at all the teachers and talk to the staffs at Tisco and Murphy. They went and talked to the teachers and staff at all three schools to fill what these would be within two new schools,
Mhm.
which I thought was very thoughtful of the planning team.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if you're hearing ed specs for the first time, it's education specifications. And when we're working on this feasibility stage, that's a process you go through in construction projects where you are using like two things, the language and expectations about what are your hopes and desires for the new project, as well as like what's the actual square footage going to be for those spaces, because we want equitable spaces across the schools. And one of the challenges that we face is Slaney was built as a high school and is used now as an elementary school. So the space is relatively unique for how an elementary school functions, while currently Murphy and Tisco are sister schools, and they were designed as twins, and they function as elementary schools that way. So as we're going through this design process, even though at the end of the day, Tisco and Murphy might not be sister schools as much as they used to be, we want to make sure that things like square footage, number of classrooms is equitable so students have a similar experience regardless of where they go to school in the town. How do you think we can bring together students and staff from the community and build some bridges? So when we ultimately get to the place where we are marrying Sliney and Murphy and Tisco, that it's not as much of a shock to the system. Are there things we can be thinking about right now and start doing, even though we're several years out?
So this summer, Maria, Lisa, and I have started to discuss with our PTAs that we are going to now, twice a year, we are going to meet with them, and we're really going to discuss how we're being more unified. And I think that's going to help us to really help the transitions of us discussing it on a more regular basis. We've always been in somewhat of silos. We do events like trunk or treat, we do the Y transition, but those are singular events. We're going to try to have more discussions where we're unified and they're not just isolated events. So I think working with the PTAs and going forward is a good first step.
Yeah, that's great.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think ways that we can now, plan for the future is also just sharing with staff, community partners, with students that, when we do this move, there is going to be that sense of belonging wherever they go. Um, I think that's probably the questions that kids are wondering, like, where am I going to belong? Who's going to be my teacher? But I think those conversations need to start happening or continue to happen.
Yeah, that's great. What would you say, or what do you say when you encounter either students or families who are worried about the changes and have questions?
I always talk that we're going to get everything that our community has been asking for. Great facilities that our community's always worried about. We're going to get cafeterias that actually are going to be fully useful for community events. We're going to get classrooms that will be enclosed so that at Tisco and a Murphy, they won't have the noise problems that we have right now. So I always try to talk about the things that I've seen so far that are going to be benefits and help support our youngest learners, that are some things that we struggle with right now in the present state. And that really has grasped a great part of my community that they're very excited and they're looking forward to it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think for me, when staff members or teachers or parents have approached me, it's all about like this is going to be a great thing for our district, and just recognizing that we are going to be missing the traditions of Sliney, the actual building, not the things like the lockers, but everything else. But I think it's just sharing with them the future of what can become of our elementary schools, but also recognizing, the great things that have happened at Sliney and how we can build on what we learned at Sliney to make an impact on the other two schools. I mean, I think that's definitely something we have to continue to recognize and, continue to share.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the construction process is not like waving a wand and it's done. There's time and growing pains to live through as there's disruption because construction that certainly is going to interrupt our routines. But I feel as long as we keep communication open and flowing, that we'll be able to navigate those challenges as they come.
I just ask them to trust us a little in the process.
Mm.
Trust that, we have the best interest in for their children and that it's the people that in the buildings that matter the most, the staff, the children, in the community overall. And that's
Mhm.
why we're doing this and live in the moment for the children. This is all going to benefit the children. And if we stay grounded in that, that's what this is really. And there's going to be some ups and downs, yes. There's
Mhm.
going to be issues day to day, but if we stay grounded that in the end this is going to be better for our children, our youngest learners, with a foundational learning for generations to come for Branford, our great coastal community,
Mhm.
it's going to just be so awesome.
Mhm.
And that's where I try to stay be
Mhm.
happy for.
And I just want to give props to, the John B. Sliney staff and the entire community because, as you have shared, the building is not, the spaces that they created, in the long run of how we can make sure every kid feels like they belong and every kid can learn. In those classrooms, they did have done such an amazing job with that. And I hope that as the staff continues to and the community continues to go through this process, we will carry that on into the two new buildings.
Yeah, I give them kudos. They have been fantastic, and I every time I visit your building, I'm so proud of what the staff has done and the children and their how
Mhm.
proud they are. So Maria, you and your community we should be very proud. But we're lucky to be one community
Mhm.
and that it's gonna all work out and
Mhm.
they're gonna be great.
Yeah.
And we've been lucky to have some of your
Yeah.
staff members already move over.
Right.
And so some of those transitions have already started to happen.
Mhm.
We have a first grade teacher moving this year and this past and the year before we had our the librarian move over. So there are transitions that are already starting to happen. So it's in the process.
So, with that spirit, several years from now, when you look back on this transition, what would success look like to you, and what do you hope is the legacy of these projects?
Obviously, we would love it to be go smoothly first. I think, and everything will be go perfect. But we also obviously understand construction, and we don't control every element. What we would want is our children to have a safe learning environment. All the things that we learned through going through level one certification, that we would have a high level of safety,
Mm.
high level of attention. The students would be able to really have the high instruction that they need, and that we can have a high value in, you know, education and at the most needy time of our students. And we could raise the bar and we could be proactive in all of those facets.
Yeah, I think, to add to what you were saying, just three things. I think for the students that they feel like, wow, so proud of the building that they're in, and, they feel like that sense of belonging. And then for the families, just being, so trusting in the work that we do as administrators and as a staff, and just knowing that when their children come to us, they're going to be well taken care of. They're going to get the best education possible. And then also for the staff, feeling that they were a part of something big, with this huge transition with the buildings of, the two new schools, and just being a part of the work that's going to make an impact on the school community.
Great. That's a perfect place to end. Thank you both.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Today's conversations remind us that a master facilities plan is about much more than buildings. It is about creating safe, welcoming, and inspiring places for students to learn. It is about giving educators the spaces and tools they need to support every child. And it is about making responsible decisions that will serve the Branford community for many years to come. The summer work already completed at Branford High School represents an important beginning. The renovations and additions planned for Mary T. Murphy and Mary Artisco elementary schools will move us even further toward that vision. We also recognize that progress of this magnitude comes with disruption and, in some cases, a real sense of loss. Closing a school and bringing communities together is not simply a logistical process, it is a human transition. We are committed to approaching it with transparency, care, and respect for the history and traditions of every school community involved. There will be challenges along the way, and there will undoubtedly be questions. We will continue to share information, listen to feedback, and keep the community informed as the work moves forward. Thank you to our Board of Education members, our First Selectmen, our district leaders, and our building principals for joining us. Most importantly, thank you to our students, staff, families, and community members for partnering with us as we build the next chapter of Branford Public Schools. You have been listening to Hive Mind Headlines. Until next time, stay hive-minded.